So this is cityscapes. And we have plenty of time here. So I have going to be using quite a few techniques on this one. But first I want to show you what I'm working from. Now, usually when I do a class on Zoom, I put my source material off screen. And I'm going to do that again today, but I'll show it to you so that you're not constantly looking back and forth between my source material and my techniques that I'm showing. Okay. I just found that works better. And so anybody that happens to want to listen to this later, I'd be happy to send you a copy of the original photograph by email. So you can do that. But this is the one we're going to do.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And I'm going to I like to work from my iPad because if I want to see a detail, I can go like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I chose this one is, well, it's the Bay Bridge. And it has a lot of technical challenges to it that I thought I'd like to address. Different ways of saving white and keeping soft edges. I'm going to try 4 or 5 different ways of doing that.
Oh, neat.
So I don't know if they'll all work, but I like to use multiple techniques because it gives more of an illusion. If you do one kind of technique, it looks like a rubber stamp kind of. But if you do a multiple of different kinds of techniques, then it sort of blends together and it makes it work. So it's not the easiest thing to do here, but I've done a lot of cityscapes, so I'm kind of game to try it. So now I'm going to put this over here and start with one of the things that I'm going to do. Now you can see that I already did a semi background here. And the reason I did this first is because I had to wait for this to dry in order to peel this part up. And what I have done here, so I've used 2 of the techniques. These are the little lights on the bridge. And this is a piece of masking tape that I've curved and attached to the paper in a curve so that I can get that line of the bridge. So now that I've let the sky dry, I can peel that off. So that's going to be one of our techniques that I'm going to use. But there's more than one. And then it's over here. And this helps me get a curve. I use this for the Golden Gate Bridge too. And that makes a nice curve. You don't want a perfect curve because this is a painting, not an illustration. But also what I've done is use this masking fluid, the liquid masking fluid. This is a Winsor Newton brand. And it's a mixture of latex and ammonia. And so it is, it's like a piece of rubber protecting the paper. And I don't use it a lot, but and it's kind of expensive too, but I don't use it a lot. But in this case, I'd like to try using it for effect. And so I'm going to take some of that off and you can see what happens. So that I was able to paint that sky without having to paint around those little white dots. Because one of the key things that you have to worry about in watercolor is keeping the paper white because it's, you know, it's a transparent medium. So I'm going to take these ones off too, so you can see my little lights over there. Now I might have to correct that. It's not perfect, but it's a start. And I just wanted to show you the technique, which I might use a little bit again. And this one too, I'm going to take this one off. You just rub it and it peels off. And of course I can repaint it. So one nice thing about the masking fluid is you can change it back. I mean, you just paint it, paint that spot. Okay, next part I'm going to do. So it's a little tricky because, for example, you can see that this part is darker than the background and it contains the background color. So that means I can paint on top of the blue sky part. However, once I get down here, the whole thing changes. And if I want to include this lighter color, this is not contained in the background. So I have to mask that off. And I want a smooth transition from that space to that space. So it's a little tricky. So I think what I'll do is paint in these parts. Well, I think I'll start with the, I'm going to use a different technique for some of these other ones. I think I'll just do that part where I'm going to paint on top. Now, of course, I could have drawn a lot more lines, and I could use something like a ruler, which I'm not going to overuse, because if you use a ruler too much, you get a lot of perfect straight lines. And in reality, these lines are not perfectly straight. And the other reason is it makes it look very, very stiff. And so I'm not going to use this. It's not going to be a straight edge for everything. So you know how people say, I'm not artistic, I can't even draw a straight line. Well, that's a good thing. You're actually better that you can't draw a straight line, because you want to, as much as possible, if you don't have Parkinson's disease or something, then you want to be able to do everything with your hand and do that way. So let me just get rid of those little lights for. So
Is
now
that
I'm
a 300 paper? That looks like pretty heavy paper.
So this is 140 arches.
Oh, it is 140.
Cold press.
Okay.
Yeah, I almost always use 140 cold press.
Okay.
So I'm going to start by painting the dark color on top of the sky. And I'm just going to start with, doesn't matter because it's got a lot of different colors in there, but the paper is dry. And I'm going to just use a couple of different colors here. Being mindful of when I get down there lower, it's going to have to blend into another color. I think I'm going to just leave the masking fluid on, do that as a separate chore. So I'm breaking up these jobs into different steps, because there's all a little bit different. So I'm still using I use only primary colors, but I use primaries that have one other color in them, because that's all you can get. I'm going to go across like that and not using the straight edge there. I see a couple of little lights. I'm going to go, this time I'm going to do a different method to save the white. I'm going to just go around the little lights and drawing circles just so I can see where not to put my paint. So I'm going to round that little light. It's a fuzzy edge light, but I'll work on that later.
That's a good idea, actually.
Mm-hmm. So I'm still using this red with blue in it with a bit of water. So it's a wet on dry method. Come down here. I'm just kind of sketching it in with the colors, and then I'll adjust the luminosity of the colors. And then this one, I'm not trying to be super, super accurate. Of course, I want people to realize that it is the Bay Bridge, but it doesn't have to be a perfect replica. That's not really my goal here. My goal here is to bring out some of the interest and the beauty of the scene, both the natural part, like the sky. There's not a lot of foliage or anything in here, so it's mostly man-made stuff. And to bring out the beauty of the light, the way it reflects on different surfaces. So I'm just going to go, how far should I go here? That's enough. So now I've got an area that's wet on a dry surface. And now I'm going to introduce some colors so that I can bring out some luminosity. So what is luminosity? It's light. So that's what watercolor is really good at, if you give it half a chance. And I'm leaving that's going to be white later. I see it's okay to paint over that because it resists. It's called resist. So that'll be white later. So now I'm free to think about only one problem at a time. And that is to get some different colors going in here. So next color I'm going to introduce is the blue with red. And the way I'm using this is now it's dry paint on a wet surface, because I've created a wet surface. And I want to apply that unevenly. And I'm looking at my photo and I notice that the values are darker at the top. So I'll put more paint on the top and let it sort of gradually go down there, the way the light is working on the surface, the metal surfaces. And I don't want to make it too even. So now I'm just doing my brush technique number 2. Number 1 is to deliver the paint. And now I'm just moving that so it goes less and less of that blue. So we have a bit of luminosity there. Now just pulling some of that over there. So you want uneven distribution of colors.
Yeah, I see you're bringing it down, but you're not going over it a lot. You know, you're not, you're letting the colors do the work.
Yeah, I'm letting the water sort of pull the colors together. So now I'm going to introduce the third tertiary color because it's a muddy brownish color. And I'm going to do it by bringing in a red with yellow. And then I'll bring some actual yellow if I need it. So I'm just unevenly, again, distributing the red with yellow. And then I'm going to have a little more red there. So see how there's unevenness there? And that's how we reflect the presence of glow or light or luminosity. And then let's put some there and some. That's enough of that. Okay, let's put the yellow with red in it. So now we'll change it to, it's going to go from more of a muddy grayish to a muddy brownish. I'll just put some yellow. I'm looking at my photo to see where to do that. I should have a little more yellow here. Cleaning off my brush, adding more yellow to this section. So now we have transition of color. What do they call it when they do their hair with the layers? It's like a ombre. That's what they call it now.
Right.
This is the ombre effect on a watercolor. All right, so now that's pretty good. See how it goes dark to light and color to color. That's what I was trying to get going there without making a further problem for myself by making something that I have to clean up. So I'm just doing that little section. That line isn't quite straight enough for me. So I'm gonna take my steady hand again and just line that up, just straighten that just a bit. And then I might scrape that piece off later when it dries. So there are a lot of repair techniques you can use, but you don't want to make it like perfect. You could take your sometimes I do it this way. Get your masking tape. I'll show you how to do it on another section. This is a new roll. Can't get it off.
I know they're difficult.
Okay, now I'll take a little piece and show you another thing to do with the tape. So I'm going to put the tape this way because I'm going to fill in that little piece of blue sky. So this is protecting the paper just the way that the masking fluid does. And it's not this method, which is just going around them so the paper just stays light. So now I'm going to butt right up against that line when I fill in this section, and I'm going to wet my brush and not get too close to that because that's still wet. I'm going to fill in this little piece of sky to try to match the other section. So I'm going to use the blue with yellow first, kind of match that section. That's a little dark, so let's move that down. And then it gets lighter. So I'm going to just add a little yellow with blue. And then we're going to end up sort of, oh, we've got some lights here too. So I'll paint around those. This time, round this little light, round this little light, round, round, round. And then I'll fix that later. But I just wanted to show you now I can take this off.
Oh, I see. Sure.
So that's just another use of it. I'll use all the different techniques just to show you how they work. But like I said, I like to use them all in combination because then it eludes the eye. It doesn't look like you did the same thing everywhere. I'm just cleaning up that little spot. Normally I'd wait for that to dry, but since it's a demo, I can't just sit here and do nothing, right? So now we'll fill that in later. All right, let's see, what should we do with this one? So I did not put anything to protect the lights there. So I think I'll just do it by hand. So then we'll go back to the method of just paint around the little shapes. Wet, dry paper, but I'm wetting this, and so that you see this little section. Go around those little lights there. Let's mix that bump, and then they kind of go together over here. So that little section is done, I think. Little piece of sky. And
how do you blend that with the dry sky above it so that you don't have hard lines? Do you
I want the hard line here because that's part of the cable. That's the cable.
Oh, that's the cable. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't want it. So now, should we do it on this part too? Yeah, I think so, because then I can let this dry. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with the sky. Again, avoiding the cable so that I still have my little lights. And this time I'm trying not to touch the bridge so that it doesn't do that again. And I'll fill it in later. I'm using both blues in this case. And now, so I'm going around this cable. So it's more important to get the shape first. I can adjust the color if I need to a little bit later or darken. So just if you go a little bit on the light side, then you can fill it in. Just make that a little bit different. So when I do a demo, I'm doing this much faster than I normally would for a painting. So that would, I'm doing it the quickie version.
And they have, I think I see masking under that, right? That's the
Yeah, down here we've got some masking for the lights.
right.
So I'll show you how that works, but then you have to wait for that to dry. So don't go through. Stop bleeding. It's okay to have a little bleed, I guess. Okay, so now I think this could use a little more color there. And I want the gradual color to go down there. Does that match? No, it needs a little more color there. So you can't see these little lights, but they're there, and they're gonna go pop and be white as soon as it dries. I'll peel that off.
Yeah, you can kind of see, you can see the masking fluid.
You can see it from there. Okay.
Yeah, you
Good.
can see it underneath.
So maybe I want a little darker so you can really see those white lights. Because I'm using the photograph as my guide, but I change it according to how the painting needs to go for contrasts and bringing out different special effects and so on. That little spot is because I had too thick a paint. That'll disappear when I put the lines in. So now you can see my little lights, right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
And that's just there until it dries, and then I'll peel it off. So let's move over to another part so I don't keep disturbing my original piece there, and I'll do another part. Okay, so now I'm going to do the little bridge over here. I didn't draw it in. You can draw yours in if you want, but I like to do it by hand. And so I'm going to go kind of like I did before. I'll start with a different color this time. Go down. Establish the side there. And I'm going to be using a different technique for the little lights here, just for variety. So I'm ignoring them this time because I'm going to put them on top. I'm going to actually use some white paint. And you can use white paint for that type of thing as long as it's a very small part, because it doesn't really match with the white of the paper, so it's not quite as luminous. So you don't want to use that too much.
What white do you use? Do you use a China white or?
You can use a China white, or I'm using acrylic.
A zinc
paint.
white. Uh-huh.
Yeah, any white paint that you have, but I usually use acrylic. Okay, and then down at the bottom, you have to, sometimes when there's multiple things you have to do, you have to lose one to get the other. So what's important to me is this fading, because I want this to fade as it gets back there to the other part. So that's why I'm not fussing about the little lights as much right here. And so let's put some more colors in there. Now that I did some red, let's do some blue. We're still going for that ombre effect. And then I'm going to put the red with yellow. I'm not doing the details on the top. I'll finish that off later because I can. And I can put that off and work on, I'd like to work on the more difficult parts of the painting first when I'm not as tired. So I'm doing that now. See if I can get some of these. What do I mean by, well, I could say important part, because some parts of the painting are difficult, but they're not important. And other parts are important, but they're not hard to do. I'm doing the ones that are difficult and important because they stand out. What stands out is high contrast items. So I'm putting some yellow in there. And when I get down here, I want it to go more orange. because that's what I see here. And then this go all the way to the yellow. They're taking my trash out there. That's the noise. So now we got the multiple color effect going on, which I want to have happen. What else? I think I'm going to move to the buildings in a minute, and then we'll get back to the bridge when some of this dries. But I think I would like to put in one line just so I can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to put in the base just with a light wash of the base of the bridge. So I can sort of see how it's going to be coming. Same technique, wet on dry. I'm using mostly water with a little color. And you notice how it gets wider as we get here. I have drawn some guidelines there because it's a pretty important to get the angle right. So I didn't want to do that completely by hand, or by eye, I should say. And then up here, nothing is really perfectly straight, even in a building, because there's a couple reasons. Partly it's visual because there's water in the air and other atmospheric things in the air. And so that distorts the edges of things. So the other reason is we know on a bridge, these lines wiggle. And so if you wiggle too, when you're making them, or any building that you're doing, it gives that feeling of motion. So we're trying to avoid this static feeling of all these straight lines in a cityscape and trying to bring it to life, bring it to animate it. Okay, so now I feel sort of more secure here because I've got the edge of my bridge here. Okay, I'm gonna just continue this down so I can remember where the water starts there. I'll go down like that. And then I'm gonna work on some more of the more difficult things. Also, when I feel like I have completed the difficult part, I go, oh, good, I can finish this anytime because it's easy and it's going to work out because I got the hard part. I'm just sketching that in so I can remember where that is. Okay, now I'm going to work on the buildings, which I think are a lot of fun. This line is going to be fixed later.
Yeah, the composition of this is really nice because it has that wonderful diagonal right across the page.
Yes, the lines of the composition are really important. So this is an award-winning photo that I took from the internet. So somebody got paid for this because it's well composed. So I always try to pick a really well composed subject matter so I can concentrate on just the painting. So I'm going to work on these fun little buildings because that's what I like to do. And I'm going to use a couple different methods, and I'm enlarging it so I can see it. So I'm using the guide of what's really there. And I'm going to stop thinking about windows and buildings and things and just think about little shapes. So this is pretty fuzzy here. So I'm going to draw a straight line because that's what I see. Don't try to figure out what it is. And I'm going to keep switching colors and softening edges so that we get this jumble of color and multiple kinds of edges. And down here, I want yellow. So I'm saying somewhat the same method. So this is going to be yellow to red. And then this little building has some blue. And I'm going to make all the colors a bit brighter than they actually are that I see, because it brings the animated quality to the city. Plus, it's one of those things that you can fix if it's not good. You have to pay attention in watercolors. Some things can never be fixed and some things can't. Well, this can. Bright colors can always be dull. So I'm just dragging the color over and making some little sort of windows. And then when it gets down here, what are you doing? Ooh, you kind of blue down there. So every opportunity you get, you want to switch colors. This is why I like to do crazy fun cityscapes, because it gives you a lot of leeway to play around with it. I'm going to switch to the other yellow, which I have not been using enough of. That's the yellow with blue. And so now we got some glowy stuff at the bottom. I'm not going to treat it any differently just because I know it's a different item. But you've got to stop and soften edges because you don't want edges to dry hard if you want them soft. So there's a soft edge, that's a hard edge. And then when we get up here, this one sort of connects And I'm going to switch to the blue with yellow. Just keep switching colors and let it run into that other color like that. That's cool. And then we go up there and then down and keep switching colors. I'm going to go to the yellow with blue. So it's going to be kind of green there. Soften the edge of that hole. And then we need some red. So you're kind of going red, yellow, blue, red, yellow, blue, red, yellow, blue, red, yellow. There's some red. And I like this type of thing to paint because you can't really go too wrong. Nobody can really tell what these buildings are, although you want to try to be as accurate as you can because somebody does sort of know which one is the Salesforce building, but they can't really tell what this one is. And I'm switching each time. I'm cleaning my brush and bringing back a pretty thick version of the paint, but with enough water so that it sinks into the paper. So see how colorful that is? If it's too colorful, then I can tone it down later, but I almost never do. But there's too many hard lines, so I'm going to soften this line because in the picture it just sort of fuzzy on that end. So you're getting this variety of changing in and out. And then I'll soften this one too because that's too much hard edge. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the yellow with red and kind of doing a crisscross here. But some of these little lights are wider or bigger than others. It's probably a street light that's in front. So I'm going to go around that one, let it run. Small little spaces. So when you find yourself feeling that you're taking too long to make something in watercolor or any kind of fine art, then you're not in your art brain. You're in your logical or left brain because you're concerned with time. And time is not a consideration for fine art. You want to go, oh, cool. I have lots of little spaces to play with here. And then we go
Now,
down.
do you worry about, sometimes when I'm drawing buildings, I tend to get the perspective off. And so it looks like you're not worrying about that because you're sort of looking front end at them.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's a little bit of sides of some buildings, but most of them are head on. So I'm really dealing with a lot of squares and not angles, not what do you call it? Diagonals. There's not a lot of diagonals. But you know what? I might throw some in there just for a change. If I can find one, I'll certainly add it because this could get monotonous. Too many straight lines. Okay, so now I'm moving along, and there, your left brain's going to say, "Oh, I know how to do those little lights now." And instead, what you want to do is do it a different way each time, because that's more like the way the world really is. And when you see a color that's too much the same color, then add another color to it. Because my goal here is to bring in variety of color, variety of shape, and don't get boring. Like this is not going to be boring. This one's going to be dark. This is a pretty dark building. Always working on the dry paper now so I can leave the little white spots. And if I decide I don't have enough windows later, I'm going to use either the scraping technique with a knife and dig them out. So that makes me not worry too much, or I'm going to add white paint. So that way I don't have to worry about things that can be fixed. And I can concentrate on the important part, which is bringing color into this little city. So I'm dragging the wet area into the next one. And I can see my brain going to sleep. I just did something repetitive. So I'm going to fix that. Let's close that window. Yeah, that's better. Nothing. Nobody's home there. All right, now this time I'm going to switch techniques slightly. I'm going to wet this section. And so there'll be a lot more soft edges. I'm going to go around that with colors. That. So that's variety of edge. I was getting too much hard edges there. And then I'll go up. Now I'm back to drawing with my brush. Where am I? If you get too far off what the photo is, then you lose your space. You lose where you are and you don't know where you are. So try to kind of follow this. Too much of one color. Let's put some yellow and some red in there. And this is a pretty blocked out area. It's going to be darker. So we need a contrast. If I keep doing the same thing over again, it's going to look like a rubber stamp. So I'm going to change this to a darker thing. Then when we get down here, this is the fuzzy edge. I'm gonna emphasize that for variety. Ooh, that worked. So that's when watercolor helps you out. That looks just like the photo where the light is. And let's bring this building up, and there's going to be a building behind that. I don't know San Francisco well enough to know what building that is, but somebody might. And then I'm gonna just do a slightly different technique here. Not so.
Yeah,
so
I
much
usually
straight.
stick in a Transamerica shape
Yeah.
just so that people know it's San Francisco, because they can't really tell by the Salesforce Tower.
No, it is not visible in this one, so I'd have to fake it, Roz, but I'd
Yeah.
be willing to do that if I had to. No, it's over here. Actually, I'm just not looking at it. Let's do that right now. So it's over here.
Oh, there
And
it is. Yeah, I
she's
see
talking
it now.
about identifying it as San Francisco. Let's put it in just so we don't forget. And then I'm going to show you another way to do. So that's the, what do you call it? The pointy one?
Transamerica.
Transamerica. Okay, so that's very iconic for San Francisco. And I'm even going to make it a little bigger than it is for identification purposes. Red, yellow. Oops. Drop some little paint on there. Get that off later. I'll take that off with a knife when it dries. And then on the top, there's a light. So let's try another light version after I straighten this up a bit. I'm going to remove some paint from here because it's too dark. I want it to be not all dark. And I want to keep the color. When I get down here, I'm just going to do, before I put my light in, I just want to get it down to the base with the yellow. And now I'm switching to just water, so it lightens as we get near the shoreline there. And I'm going to use that technique I used over here. I'm going to wet this. I'm going to bring the paint up to it so that we have an edge there. I mean, a soft edge, sorry, for variety's sake. You can't really see it until I put the ocean in here. So I'll put a little bit of ocean in there to show you. So that's going to be the light area. All right, now to how to do this, this little light. I'm pushing this over because it's going to be part of that. Don't clean up if you don't have to. That's going to end up being part of that area. That's too dark. So I'm take some paint off the top of this building. So what do I do about the white light there? Well, let's use the paint this time, okay? Just to show the difference. So I'm taking a little bit. Don't use your good paintbrush unless you plan to clean it up. If you're going to use acrylic, but I'm going to put it this little light there, and this is a opaque, so it can cover things. So that's going to be the light for that building. I'll probably have to do that again because it doesn't show up enough. That means my background sky's got to go a little darker. So back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to just pick up a little bit more of this paint because that's too harsh. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just soften the edge of the building. So now I've just really cleaned off my brush. It's too harsh. I'll just soften that edge. That's better. And later I'll put in some more white paint there or scrape it. So then we'll come over there. I have to go a little taller there. Yeah, I'll scrape a little bit off of that side too, because that is not the triangle it's supposed to be. So now here's a little building that goes into the fog, and fog's very important in San Francisco. So I want to do that. So I'll put in this little building, 3 colors, if you can remember, even if it's a little bit. And then I'm just going to soften the edge of the building so it's going into the fog like that. We'll do a few of those. So now let's continue with this. So I find this very meditative, this kind of tiny work. So that I saved this part of the job for when I just want to kind of relax. And it's a bit like knitting, maybe. It's just
Yeah,
kind of,
I know what you mean. It's it can be very meditative.
you don't have to think that much once you make up your mind what the methods are going to be. It's not like you're exactly going to sleep. It's just, ooh, here's another one. Let me try it this way now. You don't do that with knitting. I know you have to follow a pattern. That's why I hate to knit, because you have to follow this pattern. Okay, here's another building that is disappearing into the sky because it is foggy. There's a bit of fog here, so I'll just soften that you can disappear. Now this fog I did, or I don't know if it's fog or sky. I did it earlier and I didn't put enough color in this one. I'll just put some in now. Darken this cloud or fog or whatever it might be. The stuff that's
Yeah, it
always,
has a good fog effect. Yeah.
it's
I
always
find
hanging
it
around.
interesting that you do your you do your sky at different times. You don't worry that it's all going to blend together and be the exact same color and that
I
kind
can
of
do
thing.
the color correction later, probably.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is the hard part first and things that can't be fixed very easily. So that you have to get those right. And so now you see, I got a system sort of going here, the changing colors. And I might even use this pencil technique just to, what happens if you push the paper down, it just sort of goes into the gutter, makes a hole and it darkens it a little bit. So I'll use all kinds of techniques to make that varied. So this building sort of is going to the sky. So this one, let's make it not, so it will seem like it's closer, I guess, or it is closer. And this one won't have a fuzzy top. This one will be a hard edge top. So this just goes back to the idea of varying your edge and your color and your shapes. So there's a very definite building there. And there's a white stripe that I don't know what it is. I guess it's top of the building. And then I still need to change color and value. So I'll put some blue and now nothing. I'm just going to drag it down here so that it's a natural fading of color there. This one's now looking a little boring. So I'm going to put some red on this one, even though I did that one earlier, because it is one color and I don't want to have a building with just one color. Oh, you know why I did that? I forgot. Okay, so I'm going to take my knife to show you when it dries. This was done earlier. Take your knife. Oh, don't have enough windows? Here's another window. That has to be done when it's completely dry, the paper.
Oh, I see. Just scrape it off a little bit.
Yeah. And that works perfectly for something that small and irregular. So I'm saving this for later. That helps me not worry about losing all my windows because I paint over them. I'm doing the more important part, which is get this ombre effect with the colors, because that's something that definitely has to be done with the first layer. Okay, let's have it sort of get more muddy colors for a minute, so it's not all that colorful. Red,
I
yellow,
like
blue.
the fact that some of those buildings below the Transamerica are sort of recessed coming forward. They're not like the left-hand side where there's just one set of buildings that look right next to each other. It's really nice to have that recessed back there.
The changing. That's another kind of contrast. And so I'm making smaller shapes here. So that brings up the subject of when you finish one part of painting, then you go back to the other one and try to look at it in relationship to what you did. And then you have to adjust it. So this one is more complex. This one isn't complex enough. And I think it's because I don't have enough dark. So that reminds me to darken some areas because it was all kind of the same values, I think. So that, I think that's what you could see that was different. And I don't know if you can say, you don't have to say it makes it recede or not, but it's the variety that makes the painting more interesting if you have the variety and the texture going on. Now, what I see is, maybe somebody will know what building it is, but it's a bright turquoise light. So I like that because it's just another element. So let's put that in before I fill in the sky, this bright turquoise light on top of some building. I don't know what it is. Somebody probably does. And it's not turquoise enough, so I'm going to put some yellow in it for variety too. A little bit more yellow. And then I'm going to take some off because that's too much all one color. We need a little variety, something like that. It's not exactly what I see here. And on the sides, I'm going to go to a different color, which is blue, the other blue, a little bit purple. Okay, that's pretty good shape there. And we can put some more layers on that one. We can put some additional layers. Let's do something different for a minute. Now this spilled, but I'm going to show you how you can take it off. So I wasn't paying enough attention, and I'm going to make it work because I'm going to put in the water now. And that color is pretty much in the water. So which brush shall I? I'm going to switch to a bigger brush. I'm going to wet this area. This is all the water area. So it's all soft edged. I've masked out some of the little lights on the base of the bridge, so I don't have to worry about it. But I'm not going to touch the horizon of the intersection between the water and the lights, because I know I'll mess that up with this big brush. So I'll do that later. And I'll have to worry about putting extra color there because it's dark and I can paint over it. But what I would like to do is get these beautiful colors, which I'll remind you are in the water, if you can see that.
Oh yeah, almost
that's
that purple.
Yeah, the reflections of the colors in the above part, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what they're, but we got to get them in there because there was part of the pretty colors here that we need. So this well-composed photograph is also balanced with color, as well as the lines that you were pointing out earlier. So the darks and the lights. So this goes very dark and purple on this side. I'm going to do a big blob of the blue with the purple blue. And you see, even though that's wet, I can do somewhat of a dry brush if I just hit the surface, but it's a soft dry brush. It's not too harsh. More of that color, really dark over here. And then I'm going to add some red. Start with the red that makes it a bright purple, and then I'll tone it down as needed. Cleaning off my brush. It's a nice big brush, so you really got to clean that up. This is how you get your water dirty really quick. Nothing on my brush, just blending. And now I'm going to add some of the other blue to darken it. So there's more drama and more variation from dark to light. So we'll go dark to light, transition. I'm even going to add some red with yellow, and that goes almost black there. Just go all the way. That way you have the fuller range of values, and then you get more depth and more movement in the whole painting. So if I mix that in, you don't see the red, you just see the black. So now coming the other way with a very clean brush, and I think I'm going to change water because that really put some blue in there. Coming this way, clean water, clean brush. I'm going to go with a tiny bit of the cadmium yellow. Make sure it's clean. Come in this way. And then a bit of red with blue, because I'm just want to tone it down slightly. So it's sort of a peach color. I mean, that's what it is. So I'm trying to do it that way. And also it makes a nice contrast with these opposite colors. So now keep cleaning your brush on a clean rag so that you don't overmix these. So this one goes this way. Whoops, that's okay. You can have a little blue. That's too much. Go back. And then clean your brush, dry it nicely. And then we'll go this way with a tiny bit of the red with yellow. So now we got all the colors going here, like a rainbow. This is what I call the hard and important part. If I get this right, I can fake the rest. So that's got to be some great color here. And then we got to get this color to meet the other one without turning brown, which is pretty hard to do. So nothing on my brush. I might switch to the small brush. This is a bit more delicate, right? Where are you? Small brush, here we are. I'm just going to fill in with just more details there. I got the main colors. I'm pretty happy with the cleanness of the colors there.
And it's still wet on the left side, right?
Everything's still wet. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll just bring this up to where it belongs. I don't need to be using that big brush anymore because I don't want to I want to leave an orange space in between there and there. And then we'll meet up with the orange again, clean brush, wash, wash, wash. And then I'll come the other direction with the yellow. One stroke and then clean. If you go back and forth, that's going to turn brown. And now clean brush. Ooh, this is scary because if you get this wrong, it's kind of hard to clean up. All right, so that's pretty good. It's not exactly like the photo, but I'm going to put I'm going to drag some of these lines for these ripples over that way. Then what happens with the water over here? It keeps going orange until we get to the base of there. And then we got some golden color. Don't want to miss that. And then clean off my brush and then fill that in there. There's a bit of a shadow there. I'm not sure I'm going to include that. Well, I can decide later. What is more important is to get this bright orange up to the base there and then have it meet up, clean my brush off, meet up with that blue without making a line or make a nice transition between the two. Pretty good. Now I can do something easy, just darken that. Because if you're not thinking when you do the important, difficult part, then you're going to wreck your whole painting. You're going to want to start over, or you just want to give up. So now when we get up here, what happens is, glad that I covered my lights there, because I don't want to have to worry about that right now. I'm worried about color and dark and light. So now I'm going to go back to a thick version of the blue with red. Was not thick enough. Try that again. There. And I'll just ignoring my lights because I'm just covering them and try to get that edge nice and soft between these two colors without having them blend too much. Okay, so where do we go? We go here, and this needs a little red according to the photo. And you can check me out with the photo later if you have a copy of it. All right, so then there's some blue that comes this way. I'm not sure I want to include that. Oops, that's what you don't want to do. Just sort of mindlessly hit the paper. Now I've got to clean it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Takes a lot of patience.
You're cleaning the brush and then drying it, right?
Yeah, and then washing it.
Okay.
And then I'm going to put the color that was supposed to be there back. There.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so I try to avoid that step if I can. Then when we get up here, it's going to go to the other blue. I'm going to water it down slightly. It's a very aggressive color. And then it has to touch that soft edge so it blends in. And it actually goes under the bridge and all the way to the other side. And then this is a soft edge. So I'm going to soften it now because it's very hard to soften it. I mean, edge is hard. You don't want that to harden that way because it's going to be hard to fix later. Okay, so I'm almost done this part. And then I can take a breath. So that's so scary.
It is, because you're not quite sure how they're going to blend.
Yeah, and I could make muddy mess that would be really hard to clean up.
Right.
And I'll get all discouraged and mad. So get that. But you don't have to be super critical of yourself. You just say, oh, that's pretty good. It's not the same, but it's pretty good. So I'm not going to mess with it. You know how it goes. Okay, so I'm going to remove some paint there because there's a white streak.
And it'll
And I'm
fade
going
too when it dries. So
now I'm going to just soften that edge because that's how it is in the photo. So this white brim on the bottom. So I'm just going to mark that so I can see that where my light on the, what do you call it, the shoreline is.
mm-hmm.
Okay, this part looks pretty good. I just need a few touch-ups on that. So I think what I'll do while I'm waiting for this to dry, I think I just need a little blue there. I shouldn't have drawn that line in because now I see that line. I'm gonna have to disguise it with some paint. I'll probably have to put a glaze over there and do it once again. I am going to do the sky again because it didn't get dark enough at the top, but that'll have to be another day. So let's go into another problem. This is dry. I'm going to do this part of the bridge. So I have that undercoat because it's contained. I'm going to get some water. A drinking kind. And now I'm going to work on the bridge there. Okay. So I'll just do a section at a time. So I'm just going to wet part of it. And then I'm going to go nice and thick. This is a very hard and high contrast line. So I'm going to try to get it correctly because it stands out. This is what we call the part of the line of vision. So that's almost completely dry paint there. And I'll just let it fade out because I don't have time to do it all at once. I'm going to let it fade out there and I'll get to it later. And then more of this color. I'm going to make the shapes with one color and then I'll add my other colors, because I find that if you do the shapes first and then you correct the color, it works a lot better. So I'm going to just not ask myself what that is. That's just a little shape. It's a soft edge shape. That's why the paper's wet. And I'm trying not to repeat myself over and over like a pattern. I'm trying to notice that it changes a little bit as it goes along there. This is more filled in. I have no idea what it is. It's some kind of part of the bridge, but I'm trying to turn it into an artistic thing, which means I'm trying to obey the rules of organic shape and high contrast of different kinds of edges and so on. So pretend I did that and it's good enough. It's not quite good enough, but we're not going to get very far if I spend 6 hours on this painting in one section, right? Now I'm going to switch over to small amount of the blue with yellow. Unevenly again, just stroke it across. And if you don't like the way I do it, you can put the tape on and then it'll be nice and straight, but I don't want it too straight. And when I do, I give it a try with my hand drawn line. And if it really looks bad and I've had to do this, then I will later put the tape on and straighten it up a little. But I do like the wiggly line because it makes for a sense of movement. And it's accurate because that line we were saying before, it's moisture in the air. It's the actual movement of when you're looking at the bridge, it's slightly moving and you're slightly moving. And so it's accurate. It's not really straight. And then, oh, there's a third reason is we make it irregular in order to bring it, to animate it, bring it to life. See there, the way I repeated the same one, that was boring. So do it differently. I should switch colors. I'll go with the yellow with red. Blend that in so that I'm changing my hue slightly. Switch over to the other blue. See, I wanted that really dark. I think it's dark enough, and I wanted it hard because I've got lots of soft lines, but I want this to be a particularly hard line. Along the bottom, same deal. So I'm going to make a different muddy color, the bottom, and then try to make it like that. That's good. And I'll use the other blue this time, just for a different color. Even though it's sort of the same color, we want to change it because that's the way light is. It doesn't stay one color in one section just because it was painted one color. It actually changes. Now let's put some yellow in this one. It's looking quite harsh, but I think it's okay because other things are going to be fuzzy. So with some yellow in there.
Yeah, it almost could be traffic on the bridge. You know, it's
Yeah,
you
maybe
can
it's
imagine
inside.
all-
Right. I don't know what it is. It's lights and shapes. So I'm just going to try to exaggerate it slightly and then let the eye figure out what it is, you know, the person that was looking at it, because this is what my eye sees. I just want to figure out how to figure this, straighten this line up. This is a difficult problem I'm not going to fix right now. I'm going to wait for it to dry, and if we're still on the camera, then I'll do it with the tape. So this one is kind of good, but let's put some more blue in there. Is that diverse enough? Does it have enough different colors? Is it got any brightness to it? Yeah, there's a bit of brightness because I don't want only muddy colors in any one section. And this bottom part should be darker. But I'm not smoothing the paint. I'm trying to hit it in an irregular way so it's not the same color all the way along. That's pretty much the way I like to interpret a mechanical thing, by just bringing out some of the irregularities of it. And I don't think I can do that much better in that section.
Mhm.
But it changes when I'm over here on this side. So I got the curve right, I think. And then I'm going to do it slightly differently here. Switch colors because there's no little pattern of shapes that I can see in this section. So instead, I'll just go as far as the third tower, and I'll come back and I'm going to soften with the edge of my brush. So it's ombre into the other section. And then I'll just give it a hit of blue with yellow, so it's real dark at the edge there, and not as dark there, just on the edge maybe. So that's going to be pretty dark there. My hand's shaking a little bit, so I might not do as much of that. Okay, let's find something different to work on. I'm going to work on this block because it's a nice solid block, not changing colors all the time. And this will be a ploy for the other things because we need some of each. This one disappears into yellow at the base, but it's a pretty solid block of color. Now that's enough paint. I'm just going backwards and soften the edge there. So that's plenty of color in there. Almost looks like fire. And that's what it looks like in the photo. It looks like fire.
Mm-hmm.
I have something on my brush that's kind of muddy. I'm just going to use it to sketch this line in to try to be frugal with my paints. And what's interesting here is not the line. So I'm going to let this dry and do something more sparkly behind it. This can be solid color because that's kind of how it is. This X, this other X. And that's, you can see right away, that's too much one color. So you got to put other colors in there. And I like to go pretty colorfully. Not everybody does, because I always feel I could tone it down and I just don't get around to it because I don't want to once it dries. So that's quite a lot of paint, very opaque, but it's good contrast to the softer things going on here. And this needs blue at the top, I think. Yeah. Okay. So I said I was going to do a different method here. So let's put the sky in the background. I'm going to use another, not cheating, but possibly it's not an advisable technique when something is very obvious in the painting, but it's going to work okay for this tiny spot because it'll be too picayune if I try to do a different way. So I'm just going to do the sky, and then things are going to go on top of it that are going to be lighter. And I can do it a couple of different ways. I can either pick it out with a knife and paint it yellow or white. But this is kind of small, I think I'm gonna get away. So there's your sky in the background, and here too, since I've got the color on my brush here. And this time I'm using the method of going around the white spots. And I don't think I'll have to do much more to this. These are just going to be as is. I left them a little too big. So let's take some of that off. That's getting a little dark. What happens below? Oh, let's soften this edge because that is light again. There's all these different lights. It's a little dark. Don't know if it'll be okay once I put another layer on the sky, but for now I'll just take some off. Another piece of the sky. And then I think I will do the same method here because I hadn't thought about it enough earlier, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to do the white paint on this particular section for my, and then this is going to disappear here. And you have to wait for it to dry though to put the white paint on. So when this dries, I'll just put the X's on top there, and then I'll put the little white lights that are going to go here. When I get over here,
the X's will be white or orange.
In the picture, they're dark, so
Yeah, they're dark.
They can go across, and that means I can do on top of the sky color. It will blend in.
Oh, I see. You're waiting till the sky dries. I got it. Okay.
Yes, yes. And now this is a different tower over here. This is, for some reason, I guess it's in the fog. It's very light orange, So I want to point that out to my viewer because I don't want to copy anything just rotely and saying, oh, let's do them all the same, because they don't look the same. And that's what makes the scene interesting. And this can go all the way down. I'm going to put a little blue in there. So this one's kind of faded, almost disappears into the sky. So I'm going to be careful not to put too much color on this part. It's a little hint of the X there. And then a little bit, you can barely see that one. So I'm not going to put in anything that I can't see. Not a good idea. Okay, so now, is this dry? Dry enough. I'm going to put the X in. Start with this color. And there's the switch to yellow. So we get some color in there. And there's another X, and I'm going to switch the color because that's how we get luminosity. So changing color. And then it turns yellow there at the bottom. Don't know what it is. Okay, so here's a cheating thing I'm going to do, which you don't supposed to do in watercolor, but you can in this situation. And that is, we'll paint opaque. That means I make the watercolor so thick that you can't see through it, which is like oil paint. And if you do that in most of your painting, then that will look not like watercolor. But here I can do it because it's such a small thing, and you can especially do it with yellow. And so I'm putting the yellow on top, see, so it's covering a dark area, another area. So you can do a little bit of that. This goes along with my theory of you can combine techniques. But the other theory is, you probably heard this, that you should break the rules whenever it's appropriate. So there's lots of good rules, but you should break them when it's appropriate. And here I find it appropriate. So that's not opaque. That's very opaque. That's very opaque paint. But I don't think it's going to matter in the grand scheme of things here. It's going to be fine. It's going to just be another texture, right? Okay, and then let's do some white paint. You can put it on wet, I guess. No big deal. And you can also mix the opaque white, whatever you're using, with colors. And I noticed that John Singer Sargent did that a lot. So I'm just using the white paint and letting it blend into the yellow so that we get that fuzzy glow there. That works. That works. That little section off. Awesome.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Just put a little red in there too. More yellow. I mean, more white paint, I think. So that glows. This little section right there glows. I like that. So this part is done. There's certain parts of the painting that you want to leave alone, or at least wait and see, is it done or is it not done? You can decide tomorrow. So I love this light area here. So I'm going to darken this to emphasize and make it very colorful, very red there. Whoa, it's a nice little focal point. Continue over this way, changing colors. And we'll meet up with that hard line there. And that's so using a slightly different technique than I did over here and slightly different from there, but I'm still using this idea of colors bleeding into one another, because that's what watercolor is about. So that's bleeding into that color. Why not put in some red with blue there. And then some black. We'll make it dark with the blue with yellow. Let those colors blend together. And we got to eventually connect here somehow. That's got to connect on that side. That's a little irregular, but I like it. I like the unusual bleed of that. So I try to leave those things alone and not just correct them. So I'm going to leave that. It's pretty good. You have a tendency to ruin the best parts of your painting if you're not watching carefully.
Yeah, it's nice that it's not uniform. I mean, it gives it more, more interest, I think.
Yeah, it gives it movement, because then your eye is jumping around And then you don't say, oh, that line's not straight enough. And it is more like looking at something that's alive. So I'm going to put in this cable now, switching to the red. You don't want to pick one color for anything. You want to keep changing it. And let's switch to the other red. Now, nothing on my brush. I'm just going to drag this color over. And then we got these little lights. Just make a suggestion of those on the bottom. Leave more white than you think you need because it's hard to get it back. So I might scratch at that later. Oh, that is way too wide for what I want. So this might be the time to recover it this particular way, which is with the messy cleanup. See, that's why I got to pay more attention. Because that's hard to fix. And I'll stop every once in a while and see if it's okay. That part's okay. This is going to have to be redone after it dries. And I can scrape it, or I can add some white paint. So some of you are going to be a lot more neat than I am. Okay, let's go back to this thing we started with. And I'm going to put in the detail that I was leaving out before because I just want to get the color. There's a kind of a little light at the top there. It's orange. So this is a nice little detail. So there's some little square things there. And I'm using deliberately a different color, again, for the same reason. And then there's a little post or something like that. And if you get some of these little details right, it really punches up the painting. Now, what am I going to use for? I'll probably do that cheating thing with a thick yellow paint for this light. How about that? And that's recoverable. If you say, oh, that looks terrible, you can get that off because the paint is on the surface, and even after it dries, you can get it off, whereas you can't get the rest of the stuff off. So when I get tired, I'm not going to do too many more lines, because that should have been done when I'm less tired. Let's peel this stuff off for now. Oh no, we can't peel that off. I got to do the sky behind it first. Concentrating on what I'm doing here. This will have to go darker. I know you see that. The whole sky is going to go a little darker. But this is going to have to be the right color right away. So I'm just taking some of this color and filling it in here. And I'm cleaning off my brush and sharing this paint with the next little section. And even though these don't match, I know that I am going to do the sky one more layer. So I would like to have it a bit darker for more contrast with the lights. Just fill that in and going around those baby lights there. And this one, but I might touch it up with one of those other methods that we talked about. We'll see. This is at least a 3-day painting. So now there'll probably be time for this to dry, and then I'll rub it off, and you can see the bottom of my X there coming out white, and then I'll paint it with a bit of yellow. Because that's very important to me to get this transition from here to here. This is the big focal point of the painting. It is the main focal point of the painting. So you got to put a lot of energy into that section. Let's do some more of these little, I'll wet it again. These little, as Roz said, maybe it's traffic on the other side of some barriers, perhaps. Who knows? Some yellow. So if you want to punch up a focal point, lots of color and lots of contrast. That's a lot of color. That's almost like oil paint the way I did that. But that's okay, because it's going to contrast with the sky piece. This is a bit dark. Let's take that off. You don't want something to dry too dark because it's hard to lighten it. It's not impossible. Almost everything can be fixed. Okay, as long as I'm here, why don't I darken this little section? And then later, it's going to be the big brush on the sky. I'll do a whole nother layer on the sky to darken it. And so it will match up in the end, don't worry.
Oh, I see what you mean. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that'll be redone probably later. So sections are done, but other sections need a lot of work.
About how many layers do you normally put into a painting, Wendy?
Well, like I really tried to get it done in one layer, but something this complex with so many things going on, it's got, this kind of painting, you're going to have to use multiple techniques. So
Mhm.
that will include layered washes. But normal paintings, I just do one layer. Okay, so that's done. That's done. The top of the bridge needs a bit of detail. Let's do that now. Little sharp line there. Switch colors, even though it's a tiny spot. Anytime you have light against dark, the eye's going to go there. And so you better do a good job. Don't make it too messed up. Okay, that's pretty good, but it needs some yellow. So you don't go into ideas like, well, maybe it should have a light like the other one. If you can't see the light for whatever reason in the photo, do not put it there. Do only what you see, because that brings in the complexity of the quality of the air, and maybe the light was off that day, but you want that variety. You don't want it. You don't use the mentality of repetition. That's your left brain idea. That's pretty good. So this part is done, not counting the lights. This side of the light, I think it's done. Let's just sharpen up these little pivot there and there. I think that light section is going to work. Those little lights. Now, what was I going to do here? I was going to do a different kind of a building, more of a crosshatch building. Again, we're wet on dry. What time are we finished here today, Rods?
Well, we're probably at about 3 o'clock, and it's about 2:25. Okay. I forgot to tell you after the first hour, I was just too absorbed in what was going on.
That's okay. I'm just wondering if we have time to look at my slideshow. If you were able to figure out how to do screen share for participants.
I wasn't able to figure it out on this, but it's different. I'm using my iPad and it's different sometimes on my computer.
Oh, you switched?
I could use the screen. Looks like I could do that. So maybe toward the end, if we can try it again.
Okay. So you could probably let me do my screen share maybe. Okay. We'll just have something a little different there. So I put this little crosshatch in there. Might be a little too even. And then once you get to the bottom, don't leave out the red. It's going to disappear with a soft edge. Clean brush. Oops, that's a bit too much water. There, that's going to bleed downwards. What happens when we get down at the bottom? There's a dark line. We'll just get that in there. Dark line. And then some red on top. I need a little change of scenery, so I'm going to go over to this section. Is this dry yet? Yes. I'm going to use the knife. I can find it on that section, or I could use, it's a pretty important building. People are going to look at that. So tip my knife and pick off some windows there. Better. And I'm hoping that this light will stand out a bit more once I put a layer of blue over that. I think I can put my sky in there, this section. And it seems a bit more red. So I'll just go around my buildings that are dry. That's why I can do this. Oh, and there's a light on the top of that building. So I'll just leave it white. And now let's do the blue. I'm going to go with the blue with yellow. That's good. And that's going to be a building, so we can ignore that. Oh, there's a little sky. You can see a bit of sky under that bridge. Oops. Aggressive blue. Too much. I'm going to have to spread that out. And then I'd like to get that little piece of pink that's in the sky, because that's nice. So after I get this spread out a little more, I'll try to throw in some yellow and pink in this section. Here's some yellow, using the yellow with the green yellow. Just touch that up a little green. Too much. Just a hint. And then over here, I saw some nice pink I want to get in there for in the sky. A bit much, I'll take some off. Just a hint of pink in the sky. So we've got red, yellow, blue, even in this little section. I like that. Very colorful. And what's wrong with colorful? Nothing, because you can always tone it down. But what is going on with this is going to be a dark building here. There.
Even the blue under the bridge could look like a building.
There is a building underneath the bridge. I'm going to try to get that, but I've got to paint negatively by painting the sky around that little white building. And this will really glow if I get it right. This little white building with a couple of them. So let's do that minimal. And then on this side, we'll make it really dark so you can see that white building there. So I'm just cheating and making it darker than it should be. So now you see a white building hiding behind the bridge. And that's what I like here, is this complexity, the sparkle kind of. That's good. I think that's good. Darken that a bit. Now this connection is not good because I see some little lights. So let's paint around those. Sort of the point of this photo is the lights. That's what makes it interesting, I think. So if we treat the lights differently in a couple of different ways, I think that'll do justice to the different little white lights there. And now it turns sort of brown. We'll add some red. You got to have a good brush with a nice point. So that little section is nice. It's hard-edged and complex, and it contrasts well with that section. And we can see that little white building. But because I left those little white spots, you don't see the white building as much. So let's fill those in. And then we can just keep the white lights at the bottom and the white building. Good. And this is distracting. Let's put some yellow on the edge of that one and soften the edge. It's more light. There. So now I think this is what I'm looking for, this type of thing. And this is almost good. Needs a little, what's happening there? Just a little bit of red it needs there. So I like to finish different portions of the painting, so at least I feel like I'm getting somewhere. Oh, okay, let's do these lights with the white paint, because that's fun and easy. And I think it's dry enough too. I am using my good brush with acrylic paint, but I just will clean, I promise I'll clean it off real quick so it doesn't ruin my expensive brush. So this little string of lights goes bing. Ooh, not thick enough. Need it really opaque. I have some new acrylic paint if this doesn't work. Yeah, this is too watered down. I'm going to get my other acrylic paint. Be right with you. Can't find it. Let's try this again. Oh, my desk. All these things out. Okay, let's try it. I'm going to pour it out this time and see if I can make it there. That should be thick enough now. No point in doing everything twice, even though I said I'm doing a couple of things twice. Only if it's absolutely necessary. But this I don't want to do twice. So we got a bing, 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 bing. Smaller, 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 smaller.
Oh, yeah, that looks great.
That's a nice little contrast. Bing, 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 bing. And then I have a complicated area there that I'm going to just do these ones. But that's enough. You know what I think I might do is just perk these ones up, even though I was using the reverse method there. I think that's better. So anything that you do in white can be repaired. Just paint over it. So that's done. This is done. This is done. This is pretty done. Let's finish this little section. It's darker on the top, but I might make it not as dark as it was in the photo because I want to make this variation from dark to light. So let's make it a little dark and then darker as we get over here. So there's not a huge jump from there to there. And now switching to the red just for excitement here. Yeah. And I'll switch to the blue again. Switch blues, might as well do the other blue here. Just less, a little bit less. Enough paint. I'm going to spread that out before it dries. So now we got the colors going from one to another there. That's pretty cool, but this is too consistent of shape. So I'm going to put some blue there and some other colors. So let's make some more of those little shapes. And I'm doing it on the wet so that they'll bleed because I want these little shapes to have soft edges. Here's a little shape. Little shape. Shape, shape. Don't want to let myself be too consistent with color or shape because that kills all the excitement. So I'm going to switch over to the opaque yellow there. There's something a little different. So that's a different effect than this one. And then over here, I'll switch to about red. Okay, but these are too hard edged because that was dry there. So I'll just soften the edges there. And then this has got to go a little darker to match up there. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone for a minute because I want this to dry before I do more of those shapes. So I'd like to work on surfaces that are a little bit wet so the edges aren't too hard. Unless you're purposely trying, like I did over here, you really want a hard edge there. So let's work on these little lights. I think I'll use the white for this. White paint because I want a soft edge on them. Soft edge with a little yellow, I think, for not just white. A little yellow and a little red. Just a little color in this. And then I'm going to put white on top of it. Let's work on these lines this way, whatever they're called, cables. So I'm going to do these ones first. So I'm going to put two different colors on my brush, some red and some blue. And this has to be done in one fell swoop. Get the point on my brush and I'll get a steady hand. And I'm going to go, took most of the paint off Be careful not to do too many at once. There's one. And then there's some over here. Boop, boop. Gonna change the color. Don't want just one color on there. Like that. And again, if you want to, if you don't like these sort of irregular lines like I do, you can take your hard edge and then just go against it like that. But I don't like to do it that way, so I'm going to take that one off. And it's too wide anyway. And you can also sneak in some pencil lines for contrast. So some of these can just be pencil and some are going to be pen. Oh, let's do one here just to straighten that up. Now I'll try to do some pencil lines here. I mean, some paint. So I'm making a nice sharp point on my brush. I'm gonna get my angle all ready to go. That is not good, but I'm just gonna leave it. Let's do one here first. Change colors. That's all I'm willing to do at this point. I'll do some of the inside ones because they're safer. We'll do some inside ones. And I want the colors to change and some to be lighter and some to be darker. So that's why I keep using the brush, even though it's running out of paint, because I want it to fade. Again, that idea of irregularity, it fools the eye, it makes things look more active and they're moving and alive and sort of anthropomorphic effect. That's enough of that for now. This is going to be another day. I think I'm going to do that because that's going to take a couple of operations to work on that.
So one of the things we could do, Wendy, would be to stop pretty soon and continue this next month. That's one option if you want to think about it, because we don't have anyone doing November at this point.
You mean do a whole nother 2 hours on this?
Well, yeah, or finish it. May not take 2 hours, but.
Well, this painting would take a few more hours, but the thing is, I think I've taught all the techniques that I would use on this, so it'd be repetitive. So it'd be better to do a different subject. I mean, I'm just going to be doing the more of the same thing I was just doing all along here.
I see, okay.
It gets a little boring, I think, don't you?
No, I found it interesting myself, but.
This is taped, so people can watch it over if they didn't get it.
Right.
And I try to go over the multiple techniques, and then they know how to do it, but they don't have to watch me do the whole painting because I want them to go do their own painting, right?
Sure.
Okay. So I'll just keep painting here and do some more of these little buildings because they're fun. Yeah, and we'll just forget about the slideshow for today, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
If anybody's interested, I will send them some of the photos I would be talking about, or we can do it separately. Somebody that's watching this video. Switching colors. Oh, there's a nice big white light there. Let's see if I can make it glow. So I'm going to wet it. And then I'm going to put the color around it so it glows inward. There's a nice little glowy edge. And then I'll turn this into part of the building. What's happening?
Got about 15 minutes left. So
okay.
It might be, you might want to pick a section that you want to work on.
Okay.
And then just tell us what you might do with the other parts.
Okay, I'll do that, the second part first, and then I'll end up with this little, okay, so like I said, there'll be some repair work. This, I consider this finished because it's glowing into the sky. This, I'm going to probably, like I said, darken the sky, but that will take a little while so that this light will show up a bit better. And I made this building a little bigger in the photo than it is, just for identification purposes. And then the buildings here will be the same method like that I'm doing, and I'll do a little more on the far side where the buildings are farther away, more of that. And then right here, well, I can do this right now. Put the blue sky in there. And then I will have to let that dry. And then I'll do the X. And I'm going to straighten this line, make it straighter. This is a case where I'm probably going to use the tape because it's a pretty, see, that isn't quite straight there. So I can either hold this or use the tape. This way you have to be careful not when you pick it up so it doesn't, you know, it doesn't mess. So now that'll make that straighter. And then I'll keep doing a little more straightening of those lines, but as little as I can get away with. So I'll straighten that slightly. And then up here, let's put a little bit of white there, just for contrast, slightly there. Here's just more the same that we did. I'm going to remove this when the thing dries, and then I'll put, oh no, I can do this right now. This is the base of the bridge. So you darken that. And then it's reflected in the water. And then I can send the finished painting to you another time, Roz, if you want to post it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Another day, and then you can use that somehow on the website. Okay, so that's done. This is pretty done. I might put a few more streaks in there.
I'm interested to see what you would do with that far left portion, because
that's what I was going to finish with, and let's do that.
Yeah, it's going to recede into the background. That's why I was wondering what.
Yeah, it's fuzzier, so that'll happen. It'll be fuzzier. So then there's even less definition to what I'm painting. And so it's a little more abbreviated idea of what we were doing before, and a little bit less hard line. So I think I'll actually wet it so that nothing is quite hard line here. And that'll help indicate how it's farther away there, and it's less likely to tell what the heck is it. So that's wet. Remember before we worked on dry paper for most of that? This time I'm going to work on the wet paper to make it a little bit more fuzzy and fewer lines. So let's, I'm going to do the red. I see a nice red streak there. And then it happens to meet the water. There's no line there. Try not to think about what it is, but what it looks like. And there's some, okay, nothing on my brush. I'm just going to drag some colors. That's too wet. So I'm putting, just letting it bleed a bit. Because it's fuzzier when it's far away like that. Some yellow. And I think this is a good place for the pencil technique, where I'm just going to drag some of this color and dig some of it in there. And you can
I like
do
that
this
technique. That's a neat technique.
Yeah, it's fun. So that's there. And that was too much paint. So I'm removing some. Oh, good. That worked out just right. Now I'll put some of the yellow with blue here. It's just not wet enough, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of water to that. So there's a nice little luminous blob that works for me, but it needs a bit more definition. So I'm going to use the pencil, and I'm just digging in there to make a couple shapes. If that's not enough, then I will add some paint after it dries a little bit. And there actually is a ship there. I can identify that ship, but I don't have to bring it out. And since there's lots of white spaces that I already lost, then I'm going to have to recover that with the white paint. You can do it before it dries and sort of mix it in with your watercolor. It would just like using white watercolor. And I'm going to do that now because we're short on time. So that's about how I would do that little section with a bit more red. This far away section makes it nice and colorful and nebulous. like, I don't know what that is, but it looks mysterious and cool. And then what is there? There's a dot of bright red, which I always like to throw in there. So something like that, maybe some more yellow. And some more sharp, I'm sharpening up my brush with a nice sharp and some very dry blue paint to make a couple of dark shapes, just to, like that. Little hard line there and here. So that's sort of what I want to do. We don't want that hard line though, so let's fix that right now. Just, I'm gonna soften the edge. There. Now this is going to feed into where the bridge is going to be here. This is the first tower, that's the second tower, and so on. But all these, this whole area is going to take a little more work of the same variety that we're doing here. So let's go over what I would do later. When this dries, I'm going to peel this off and do that yellow to golden area that blends into there, because this is my big focal point. This is going to be white here. I think I can do, maybe I can take this off now. Yeah. So that I'm recovering that white area. But you got to be careful not to do it next to something that's wet or it'll smear. So I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I need a tiny bit of yellow paint. I'm going to blend that into the top part. And this is going to be a high, once this, I get this off, and I can't do it right now. This is going to be white and then blend into a kind of golden. I'll just do it on this one side so you can see it. So it goes from almost to golden, a couple different colors from almost black. So we go all the way from this color to white here. This is a focal point. I smeared that, so I'm going to have to put some white on there. I can do it right now. So I'm going to spend a lot more time on that because it's an important and hard thing to do. But I think I've got this part well, and then I'll have to work on that later with the same method. I don't want that white there, so I'm taking it off. That goes that way. All right. So you